derail the show. So let's try.
All right.
So where do we want to begin this? Do we want to begin at where it all fell apart to me, which is at the end?
No.
Everything was great about the invasion angle until the end.
I mean, okay.
The payoff was so lackluster.
It was cheesy, and I'll get into that. But basically, and what really solidified me wanting to talk about this in particular was on Twitter the other day. I saw a tweet from Lance Storm, and he was the guy, and jogged my memory a little bit. He said that his super kick was basically what started the WCW invasion, pretty much. If it wasn't, the horrible, very forgettable WCW championship match between Buff Bagwell and Booker T on Raw, which was voted, I can't remember where, but it was voted the worst match in Raw history. And that's a long history of Raw, where that's voted the worst.
Too, because I'm pretty sure Kevin Federline had a match on Raw.
But he beat John Cena.
Yeah, but still, it's still Kevin Federline, which is the most also-ran of also-ran celebrities.
Yeah,
had a match on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, well, I mean, what can you do? But anyway,
something that happened.
But this is, I agree with you. This is where you said that this was kind of like okay, by the time that WWE had bought both companies, WWE was already using ECW pretty much as, what NXT does to its talent now. It was using it as a breeding ground and as a training ground for potential talent that's going to come on to the big show. So basically, now you have you own what's it called? You owned all three companies. You have sole control of every intellectual property in which that they owned. Now you own it. And it was probably the best case scenario of, making use of whatever contracts were left over and bringing different faces. It was almost like a much extended tryout period for a lot of the talents.
For the ECW guys, they had the full complement of talent, but they really didn't have the full complement of talent that was available to them, because some of those guys still took the WCW money and stayed at home.
Yeah, but we'll get into that in just a minute, because you know what? Screw it. Let's just get into it now. Basically, what you were saying, where at the end, it was basically all WWF against one another, supposedly under...
It was WWF against ECW's guys that stuck around towards the end. Guys like Rob Van Dam, guys that could actually be some talent. And then it was like the C-level, the Thunder mid-card of WCW. That I thought was the most lacking part. All due respect to Mark Jindrak, Sean O'Hare, and they were talented wrestlers and had a good look, but there was just nothing there for WWE fans to latch on to personality-wise, I think. They weren't given that by the creative at the time, or what have you. Whatever it is, they tried, and it just went over like a lead balloon.
Okay, let's. I'm looking at the Survivor Series 2001 card where it basically all ended, pretty much. So I'm just going to run down the card here really quick. Lance Storm, Justin Credible, and Raven defeated Albert, Scotty 2 Hotty, and Spike Dudley. That was the opening 6-man tag match. Christian, hold on, wait. Let me just read the whole thing. Christian, who was the European champion representing the Alliance, defeated Al Snow of the WWF. Okay, all of them.
Was Christian still wearing the mesh shirt at the time? I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Okay, then you had Regal, who was of the Alliance, defeating Tajiri in a regular singles match. That feud was okay. Then I enjoyed this match for what it was back in the day, and I just watched it not too long ago. Edge versus Test, where Edge unified the WCW United States and the WWF Intercontinental titles. The Dudleys with Stacy Keibler, who were the WCW Tag Team Champions, defeated the Hardy Boys, who were the WWF Tag Team Champions, to unify both tag titles. Let's see, the Immunity Battle Royal, which that was a good gimmick at the moment, where was it was good, but then Test wins, which you kind of knew that somebody like that was. Side note,
a Vince McMahon guy, because let's face it, Test was your prototypical Vince McMahon guy.
Yeah, tall, tan, handsome,
muscular, ejacular.
Yes, but okay. So then you had Trish Stratus defeating Lita, Jackie, Mighty Molly, Jazz, and Ivory in a 6-pack challenge for the vacant title. About a 5-minute match. Again, that was really women's wrestling at the time. So
that was women's wrestling at the time, but that was good. That was very progressive by what would follow it shortly thereafter. Because I think shortly after is when we got bikini contests, where literally 90% of the women's segments were bikini contests, musical chairs.
Pretty much
stuff.
Mud wrestling, Jello wrestling, all that good stuff. So then here comes the main event, and this is the part where
hot lesbian action. Sorry, I had to get that in there.
Yes. Okay. So this is the part where you could really pick apart the whole angle. And between this main event and the whole card of Invasion, which I'll get to in a second, Team WWF, The Rock, Big Show, The Undertaker, Kane.
It's like a murderer's row.
Yeah, and Chris Jericho. Versus the Alliance.
This is the Harlem Globetrotters against the Washington Generals.
Well, hold on. The Washington Generals had Kurt Angle, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Rob Van Dam, with Booker T and Shane McMahon mixed into it. Where, okay, you have Shane McMahon, Steve Austin, Kurt Angle. Other than the tag on, saying you're representing the Alliance, this is a full WWF card.
That's a decent Survivor Series main
event. It is, but let's dissect that for a second.
Okay.
This could have easily been like a 6-on-6 or whatever. Not necessarily with the talent that they had currently at the moment. But could you imagine if the floodgates had opened and you all of a sudden have Goldberg, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, Sting.
I mean, essentially that's when you should have done the NWO thing. Vince McMahon should have had the coming to Jesus meeting with all three of those guys, either individually or together, and just been like, hey, I'm sorry, whatever, put aside whatever differences we have, but I think we have, now is the time. I am the undisputed king of all wrestling. Now is the time for us to really go and make some money together. I got some good ideas. Because the NWO was, it had definitely lost its luster at the time. It had gone through what I call the silver and black era with Jeff Jarrett and Bret Hart.
Right.
But I think if they had done that sooner than they actually did, you would have gotten a longer run out of it probably, and who knows what would have been different. I think that to me is the number one thing that could have saved it, because you bring in those guys, those three guys ahead, it's where it's the NWO, WCW, NWO, where like those two factions have joined together against Vince McMahon's group.
Yeah. Okay. So not to cut you off. Per Blake's question of yes, Trish and Lita did have a bra and panties match with Stacey and Tori, with Mick Foley as the special guest referee. So there was that. Overall, okay. So then we go with that Survivor Series main event. And I agree with the note of Goldberg was overrated as far as a talent, but you could not deny his draw. You can't deny his draw.
At that time, he was at his peak popularity. Still,
right? Yes,
he could still be draw. Yeah, I recognize that. I will concede that point. My Goldberg hatred blinders aside, but even look, there was Savage was still in condition. Like Savage could still have gone. Like, can you imagine if everybody just put ego aside and put personal issues aside?
I mean, shit, you could have had Ric Flair in there too. Like, okay, the main event of Invasion was the inaugural brawl between the alliance of Booker T, DDP, Rhino, and the Dudleys versus Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, Jericho, The Undertaker, and Kane. Again, another murderer's row of WWF talent, where this seemed more like a legitimate WCW or alliance versus WWF. Not even that, just those were all ECW and WCW talent, despite the Dudleys' involvement. I mean, the Dudleys were so fresh in the WWE, they're still thought of as ECW talent. So
they're still thought of as ECW talent even when they were still in WWE, even before the Invasion Act.
Yes. So I mean,
anytime they did something, they got those ECW chants.
Even well, not that they ever did it, but even if they did an arm drag, they would have gotten an ECW chant. But anyway,
I've never seen Bubba Ray Dudley do an arm drag. I'm not saying that he couldn't. It's something I've probably never seen the man do.
And you probably will never see unless he does something crazy at Ring of Honor. So anyway, let me just.
That Dalton Castle segment was fucking hilarious.
That was hilarious. Okay, so let me just run over Invasion really very quickly. Chavo Guerrero defeats Scotty 2 Hotty in a singles match to open up the show. Okay, if I remember it right, good match. Good way to open it up, no problem. Edge and Christian defeats Lance Storm and Mike Awesome. Now, two things. One, they really missed the boat on Mike Awesome. Whether he did ECW dirty or not, which, okay, he did. He totally did. He sold out. He bought into the bigger product, which, if I was in his situation, I mean, I would have. That's
a business move,
right? And I would have handled it. I would have handled it differently, and not take a new contract when you're holding another company's belt, which was probably the shittiest part of the entire thing.
That was the main issue at hand.
Yes,
I think.
Yeah.
Were the start of all the acrimony.
I remember reading on ECWWrestling.com back when that all was going down. And Mike Awesome had to drop the title, and I think it was a double change. Well, no, it wasn't a double change because Taz won the belt in Indianapolis. I'll never forget.
The only time you had a contracted WCW wrestler versus a contracted WWF wrestler
for the ECW title.
They're wrestling for the ECW title. Like, that was the crazy part of wrestling. Like,
yeah,
that was it to me. Like,
and even if it was an Indianapolis crowd, I completely believed ECWWrestling.com when they had said at that time, and I'm paraphrasing at this point because it's so many years since the article was out, that Mike Awesome.
That's how ancient it was on the internet. We couldn't even get, like, live video was like totally outside the realm of possibility. We had to deal with pictures from the official website.
Yeah, and okay, but to what I was going to say. ECWWrestling.com, I remember reporting that Mike Awesome actually had to be escorted out of the building because of, like, ravenous fans wanting to hurt him. And I don't doubt that whatsoever because, no matter if it was Indianapolis, Chicago, New York, Philly, ECW fans were very passionate.
Those ECW, yeah, they were the hardest of the hardcore. Like, those are the people that would, I always, my most legendary ECW fan moment was the one-night stand shows and chanting "fuck you, Cena," and, like, they literally hijacked a show for a good 5 minutes.
Yeah,
because, like, the guys were just in the ring. Were just like, "Oh yeah, we're not doing anything. We're just letting this play out."
Yeah, and the second
they just knew.
And the second point that I was going to make about that tag match in particular, that was a really solid match. I mean, I don't know what kind of tagging experience Storm and Awesome had beforehand, even though if I remember, I don't know if Awesome was a Canadian as well. I'm not so sure. But
no, he's definitely from Florida.
Okay, I know that's where he eventually lived and died. But
it's in his theme song. I think it's. Well, yeah, sure. Nobody was really born in Florida.
I think they did tag when they were a part of that Canadian alliance in WCW for a little bit. I think they did tag there. But